In 1174, a fire destroyed much of Canterbury Cathedral's choir, and within 5 years, master builder William of Sens had rebuilt it with a revolutionary Gothic design, including a lead roof that still covers parts of the structure today, 850 years later. That same roof has outlasted the Holy Roman Empire, the Black Death, the Reformation, the Industrial Revolution, and the invention of the Internet. Meanwhile, a homeowner in Phoenix who installed an asphalt roof in 2003 is already shopping for their second replacement. The medieval roof wasn't maintained by teams of specialists with modern tools. It just sat there, doing its job through century after century of rain, snow, and wind. The difference isn't luck or climate. It's that medieval builders understood something about permanence that we've deliberately forgotten in pursuit of cheaper construction. Medieval roofs were built from substances that don't have expiration dates. Slate, quarried from compressed metamorphic rock, is essentially fossilized mud that spent 300 million years under pressure. It doesn't rot, rust, or decompose, it just exists. When a medieval quarrier split slate, he worked with the stone's natural grain, the direction the minerals aligned during formation. This produced thin tiles that were light enough to handle, but dense enough to resist weathering. A properly split slate tile weighs about 10 pounds per square foot and can last 300 to 400 years before needing replacement. The weathering it does experience, a slight surface roughening, actually improves performance by helping water bead and roll off rather than sitting on smooth surfaces. Clay tiles offered similar durability through different chemistry. Mediterranean tile makers fired their products at temperatures exceeding 1800 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to partially vitrify the clay surface into a glass-like coating. This seal made the tiles impermeable to water while the thick body, often more than an inch, gave them thermal stability. The tiles could expand and contract with temperature changes without cracking because the material was homogeneous, fired uniformly throughout. The curved profiles weren't decorative flourishes. The S-shape created overlapping channels where tiles nested together, providing multiple barriers against water penetration and air gaps that allowed trapped moisture to evaporate. Lead roofing represented the premium choice for important structures. Lead is peculiar, soft enough to work by hand, yet durable enough to last indefinitely. When exposed to air, lead forms a protective carbonate layer, a dull patina that prevents further oxidation. Medieval plumbers named for plumbum, Latin for laid cast sheets, by pouring molten metal onto sand beds, then hammered them to size. The sheets were joined with standing seams, raised ridges that allowed the metal to expand and contract without tearing. Canterbury Cathedral's lead roof requires occasional maintenance, checking seams, replacing damaged sections, but the material itself hasn't failed. It's been there since 1179. Compare this to asphalt shingles, which account for roughly 80% of American residential roofing. Asphalt is a petroleum byproduct, essentially the heaviest fraction left after refining crude oil. Manufacturers saturate fiberglass or cellulose mats with asphalt, then coat them with ceramic granules for UV protection. The problem is fundamental. Petroleum products degrade when exposed to sunlight and temperature cycles. UV radiation breaks molecular bonds in the asphalt, making it brittle. Daily heating and cooling causes expansion and contraction the material can't accommodate indefinitely. The protective granules wash away gradually in rain, exposing raw asphalt to accelerated degradation. After 15 to 25 years, the shingles crack, curl, and fail. This timeline isn't a defect, it's inherent to the material's chemistry. You cannot make asphalt last 300 years because the molecules break down. Medieval roofs were steep because water doesn't climb hills. A roof pitched at 45 degrees or steeper sheds rain almost instantly. Water hitting the surface runs downward immediately, following gravity without pooling or seeking gaps in the roofing material. The faster water moves, the less opportunity it has to penetrate through overlaps, seams, or minor imperfections. Steep pitches also create significant overlap between roofing elements. On a 60-degree roof, slate tiles might overlap by 6 to 8 inches, creating 4 or 5 layers of protection. Water would need to work its way horizontally under multiple tiles to reach the roof deck below, a nearly impossible task when gravity is pulling it downward and off the roof. The steep pitch served another function, self-cleaning. Snow couldn't accumulate to dangerous weights because it would slide off before building up. Ice found little purchase on smooth slate angled sharply downward. Leaves, debris, and organic matter that might trap moisture and promote decay simply fell away. The roof cleaned itself through geometry, requiring no human intervention to remain functional. This wasn't accidental. Medieval builders in snowy regions made their roofs steeper than those in temperate areas, adjusting pitch to local conditions based on practical experience. Modern roofs often use much shallower pitches. A 4 in-12 pitch, rising 4 inches for every 12 inches of horizontal distance, is common on ranch homes. Some commercial buildings have nearly flat roofs with pitches as low as 1 in-12. These shallow slopes reduce material costs and make installation easier, but they compromise water shedding fundamentally. Water moves slowly on a shallow roof, pooling in any slight depression. It has time to work its way under shingles through capillary action, the tendency of water to creep into small spaces through surface tension. Wind can drive rain horizontally under shingles on a low-slope roof. Modern roofing compensates with underlayments, sealants, and ice and water barriers, but these are temporary solutions. The underlayment tears, the sealant degrades, and water eventually finds its way through. The roof structure supporting medieval materials was engineered, not with calculations, but with experience, to last as long as the roofing itself. Oak was preferred for its density and natural rot resistance. Medieval carpenters selected slow-grown oak from crowded forests where competition for sunlight produced tight, even grain. They cut trees in winter when sap flow was minimal, then air-dried the timber for years before use. This slow seasoning allowed the wood to equilibrate with atmospheric moisture gradually, preventing the checking and warping that rapid kiln drying causes. The resulting timbers could bear loads for centuries without significant degradation. Medieval roof frames were deliberately overbuilt. Beams were thicker than strictly necessary because builders understood that time would eventually compromise any structure through rot, insect damage, or unforeseen loads. By incorporating excess capacity, beams that could support twice their expected load, they ensured that even after degradation, the structure would still function. The joinery was equally robust. Mortise and tenon joints, cut with hand tools to tight tolerances, locked together mechanically. Oak pegs secured the joints rather than metal fasteners that could rust and fail. The wood itself held the structure together through friction and geometric interlocking. Modern roof framing uses dimensional lumber from fast-grown plantation forests, trees that reached harvest size in 20 to 40 years rather than the 80 to 120 years of old-growth timber. This rapid growth produces wood with wider annual rings and lower density. The lumber is kiln-dried quickly to meet construction schedules, sometimes creating internal stresses that cause warping years later. Modern framing is engineered to meet minimum code requirements with little excess capacity. When water damage or insect infestation compromises a modern roof frame, failure can come quickly because there's no reserve strength built into the system. The structure was designed to be adequate, not durable. Medieval roofing was a specialized trade learned through years of apprenticeship. A journeyman roofer had spent a decade mastering not just the physical act of laying tiles, but the underlying principles of water management, material behavior, and structural integration. This knowledge was empirical, derived from observation and corrected by failure. A medieval roofer knew instinctively how much overlap different pitches required, how to cut and fit tiles around dormers and valleys, how to integrate flashing at chimneys and walls. This wasn't written in installation manuals. It lived in the hands and minds of craftsmen who understood their materials intimately. The pace of work reflected this expertise. Medieval roofing proceeded carefully. Each piece of slate was examined for hidden flaws, subtle cracks or weak spots that would fail prematurely. Defective materials were rejected before installation, not discovered later as leaks. The work was done entirely by hand with simple tools that required skill but produced precise results. A practiced roofer could feel how a tile sat, could judge by eye whether alignment was correct, could adapt techniques to specific conditions. The work was slow by modern standards, but the result was roofs that functioned for centuries. Modern roofing prioritizes speed. A crew can strip and replace a typical residential roof in 2 to 3 days. This speed is economically necessary, labor costs are high, and homeowners want minimal disruption. Asphalt shingles enable this speed through standardization and simplified installation. They're attached with pneumatic nail guns firing fasteners in seconds, but speed compromises quality. Proper flashing around penetrations takes time. Ensuring consistent overlap requires attention to detail. When crews work under time pressure, shortcuts happen, valleys aren't properly sealed, underlayment tears and isn't replaced, nail placement becomes sloppy. The problems emerge years later as leaks, long after the crew has moved on. The homeowner bears the cost of installation failures that were baked in by economic pressure for rapid completion. Medieval property owners made different calculations about value. A slate or tile roof cost significantly more than alternatives, but it was understood as a permanent improvement. The high initial investment was justified by eliminating replacement costs. Over a 300-year lifespan, even an expensive medieval roof cost less per year than cheap alternatives requiring periodic replacement. More importantly, the property owner expected the building and the roof to serve multiple generations. The investment benefited not just the builder but their children and grandchildren. This long-term thinking made expensive, durable construction economically rational. Modern economics operate on shorter timescales. Developers building homes for sale optimize for purchase price, not life cycle cost. A cheap asphalt roof keeps the initial price competitive, making the home more marketable. The buyer who will pay for replacement in 20 years isn't part of the seller's concern. Mortgage financing reinforces this short-term thinking. With 15 or 30-year mortgages, buyers focus on monthly payments, not long-term maintenance costs. The roof's second or third replacement cycle falls outside the financial planning horizon. The result is systematic optimization for initial affordability rather than enduring quality, creating recurring costs that feel normal only because we've accepted disposable housing as inevitable. Medieval roofs lasted 500 years because builders combined materials that don't decay, geometric designs that shed water aggressively, structural frameworks built with excess capacity, skilled installation by trained craftsmen, and economic systems that valued permanence. Modern roofs fail in 20 years because we've reversed every one of these priorities in pursuit of lower initial costs. We use petroleum products instead of stone, shallow pitches instead of steep ones, minimum code framing instead of overbuilt structures, rapid installation instead of careful craftsmanship, and optimize for purchase price instead of lifetime value. The knowledge of building permanent roofs hasn't disappeared. It's preserved in the medieval structures still functioning today and in the traditional craftsmen who maintain them. What's missing is the economic and cultural will to apply that knowledge. We've chosen disposable construction not because it's better, but because it's cheaper upfront, and we've organized our entire building industry around that choice. The cost appears later, in endless replacement cycles that earlier generations would have considered absurd.